We talk about a lot of different things on this channel, from steroids, workouts, to just absolute criminals in our society. Enjoy talking about a wider range of things, but I do, at my heart, really become, well, I guess most aware when I'm talking about steroids and their implications within the human body. So without even making this intro longer than it needs to be, let's watch some first cycle advice from people on TikTok or people who have done first cycles. I think you'll think it's quite interesting.
What do you recommend for a first cycle? You came to the right person. I just went through this, let me tell you. First off, keep it simple, one compound only. That compound, testosterone and anthate. Run anywhere between 4 and 500 mgs weekly. Get your blood work before, during, and after the cycle. It's not that expensive. Lastly, keep your estrogen checked to avoid gyno and acne. This is my go-to AI.
Right, so right off the bat, 400 to 500 milligrams as a first cycle isn't a bad idea, but it's not necessarily needed. What I would typically do for someone is just start them at 200 to 250 milligrams if they're going to start a first cycle, if they even have to. Most of the time they don't, because their physiques are just garbage as it is, and they simply don't need any form of enhancement. They just need to be better at taking care of themselves. But needless to say, starting at around 200 milligrams would be much more efficacious, as you wouldn't have to deal with a ton of estrogen. You wouldn't have to deal with the side effects such as acne and hair loss immediately, and you could assess your tolerance for testosterone at large. And this is really important because you don't know how much estrogen you convert. You don't know if you're going to actually respond extremely well to even minimal doses of testosterone. 400 to 500 milligrams can actually be quite a bit for some people. Now, realistically, you don't want to stay there forever. You're going to titrate that dose up, but starting slower and lower is usually the way to go. Furthermore, when you're natural and becoming enhanced, you have to realize that your natural testosterone secretion is diurnal. That means in the mornings it's high and in the evenings it's low, but also it's very sensitive to life changes such as sleep, nutrition, and many other things. So from your serum testosterone levels being highly volatile, depending on what kind of lifestyle you live and as well just the time of day, you now have a very consistent serum testosterone level. And this is because you're actually just injecting it and it's quite stable within blood serum. He also recommends exemestane. So this is why I wouldn't start at 400 to 500 milligrams. For one, I do want to be very clear. He is recommending a product that he is sponsored from the company from, so he's trying to turn a profit. So maybe his intentions by recommending this aren't so valid. But regardless to say, this is an AI, an aromatase inhibitor, and stops the conversion of testosterone into estrogen, keeping you from reaching high estrogen levels. Now, you should be verifying this with blood work because low estrogen is absolutely miserable and you will have no sex drive, terrible mood swings, and no energy. The better choice, in my book, would be to start at 200 milligrams of testosterone, not have highly volatile estrogen levels, but even further, if you need to increase the doses, add something like a DHT. But that's the thing, you should have accumulated some blood work to assess what 200 milligrams of testosterone is going to put your estradiol at. And therefore, if you need that dose titration to be a dihydrotestosterone or a testosterone derivative. Dihydrotestosterone derivatives do not convert into estrogen, just to be very clear.
People always DM me, Matt, what should I take for my first cycle? Where can I get trend? How'd you get so fucking juicy looking, bro? And I just don't have time to respond to like over 1,000 DMs over the last 2 years. So this is what all of you guys are gonna do for me. Remember, less is more. When I was 18 years old, my first cycle was only testosterone, and that's all any of you need. And for your first cycle, there's no reason to go over like 250 milligrams. What I did for like 20 weeks straight, and for you guys, I'll do like a 12-week cycle max, is take 125 milligrams to 250 milligrams testosterone enthate or testosterone cypionate. When I did that for my first cycle, I literally did not have facial hair. I grew a full beard after 20 weeks. My voice changed. It completely changed the structure of my physique. Honestly, that first cycle changed my life. But yeah, that's all you need. Don't take any more compounds. Don't take tren. Don't start taking orals. All you need is test.
All right. This guy's based. This is real. This is, I didn't even see this. I promise. I'm reacting live. This is a fucking good, solid piece of advice. You don't need orals. You don't need a copious amount of different drugs. You don't need high milligrams. You need to assess your tolerance to a drug. You have to understand, and everyone's like, oh my God, 200 milligrams, that's TRT. No, it's not. I don't know where people get these numbers from outside of private clinics. If you actually go to an endocrinologist, no endocrinologist is like, let's throw you on 250 mgs, buddy. That's not a real thing. And there's no endocrinologist in the state of the United States that would do that. Furthermore, a doctor's best interest is to keep you healthy. Why would he prescribe you super physiological doses of testosterone if he knows that there are correlated negative effects from that? People are lunatics here. one's kind of sad. This guy has been on gear for a year now, supposedly, from what the comments are saying, he's commenting. And this is his cycle already, which is freaking ridiculous. 500 mgs of testosterone, and he's going to push that up to 875 mgs of testosterone. He's doing 400 milligrams of NPP, 600 milligrams of equipoise, and then 500 milligrams of tren, along with 100 milligrams of D-ball. I don't know if this is rage bait, but that's fucking ridiculous. And I've been seeing more and more of this online. And to run this cycle and achieve this kind of physique, whether he likes to say, which he does in the comments, that it's not reached blood serum concentrations yet, so you can't judge his cycle. The cycle's not, we don't judge people on their cycles, we judge people on their physiques. And if your physique's not great, you obviously haven't done something right in your past, and you're obviously not doing something right now, let alone the workout itself. You're just using momentum to move all those astronomical plates that you've put on there, and everyone's probably pissed at you because you've taken every fucking plate in the gym to get a cool video for TikTok. Besides the point, this is a ridiculous cycle, and this person could be way bigger, way stronger, and a lot better looking if he just maintained, I don't know, 500 to 1,000 milligrams of total androgens and keep that at 500 mgs of testosterone, 500 mgs of primobolan. Call it good. There's really no need to be excessive, and this is almost ridiculous. And in many cases, I would tell this individual to, instead of running oral compounds and multiple different anabolic steroids, run peptides instead. Run something like IGF-1. Localize the injection towards the muscle you're trying to train before you train it, or use growth hormone, which is quite innocuous in terms of long-term changes to the body that are going to be harmful to you, and it does really decrease the need for a massive amount of anabolic steroids such as this. This is highly destructive behavior, and this individual is not going to be healthy. If I was to interpret his blood work, I'm sure it would be horrendous.
What is the best cycle you can do for a first cycle, get the least side effects, and still get results? Now, first of all, I do not recommend nor endorse the use of anabolic steroids in any way possible. However, if you are planning on doing a cycle, I will tell you my suggestions on the safest way possible and get the least side effects. I said safest, not safe. Make sure you keep that in mind. Now, before you begin thinking about doing a cycle, always make sure that you're actually training in the gym naturally and consistent for at least 5 years. When it's time to do a cycle, always make sure you have all your compounds on hand, including post-cycle therapy, before you begin. You don't want to be done with your cycle and not having post-cycle therapy ready. That's going to make recovery a bitch. Now, I always recommend testosterone as a base at 200 and 250 milligrams a week maximum for 12 weeks, not more. Do not listen to people telling you need 500 milligrams a week. 200 and 250 milligrams is more than enough, especially for a first cycle. If people feel you need more, they are using cheap quality underground tests. You use good quality tests, that's as much as you need. Now, I do not recommend adding any compounds that stress your liver for a first cycle. No dianabol, no anadrol, no winstrol, especially not tren. So what I recommend is using Anavar for the first 8 weeks with your testosterone. This combination works extremely well for a first timer because it's the easiest thing possible for the body. You are not stressing your liver. However, Anavar is going to decrease your HDL and increase your LDL cholesterol. So make sure you're keeping the fats high, your omega-3 fats high. So Anavar for 8 weeks at 30 milligrams a day, testosterone for 12 weeks at 200 and 250 milligrams a week. Doing this is going to allow your body to have a good anabolic response and get the least side effects possible. You might still get side effects, but chances are they're going to be very minimal. Now, after you're done your last injection, you wait 10 days and you begin post-cycle therapy, either with Clomid or Novadex. Some people prefer Clomid, some people prefer Novadex. If you don't know how you're going to respond, use both just to be sure. And do that for 21 days. After you're done with your cycle, wait and see how long it's going to take for you to recover. But recovery should be around 2 to 3 months, but based on this cycle. However, I've seen people taking 4 months to recover. So that's it. That's the safest way on doing a first cycle.
Man, I was actually looking forward to this video. It's some solid information that actually got into the algorithm, and then towards the end of the video, it just completely became deranged. So yes, I agree with him. Once again, 200 to 250 milligrams. I've seen people gain 20 to 25 pounds on that in a single year. I don't understand why people think it's not that much. I think the people who think that are just not doing the right things that, you know, kind of are a preface to using gear. But anyways, what he says is great information. And then he says 250 milligrams for only 12 weeks. And that really makes me scratch my head and ask the question, why? And if I was to ask that question, I bet you the generic response would be, well, because that's, you just got to stay, you just got to stay healthy, bro. And it's like, okay, how do you know you're unhealthy? Truly, like, let's be objective. How do you know you're unhealthy on 12 weeks of what is a minimally increased dose compared to TRT? Blood work, organ imaging, did you do any of that? Well, I didn't, but no, like you don't know. And so what I do in coaching and what, you know, Adam, who works with me, does, and the coaches that I work with, Vigorous Steve and so on, is we judge a cycle and its length based off of health metrics. How do we see those health metrics? Well, we have you measure your blood pressure. We have you measuring blood glucose, and we have you going to get your blood work done about every 8 to 10 weeks. And then about every half a year or so, get some organ imaging done. This very clearly tells you when exactly you need to be coming off of steroids as you start to see trends create themselves in patterns of your blood work. And that is the indication you need to say, hey, it's time to come off, take a break. But if there's nothing wrong, if there's no reoccurring concerns in your blood work that you're seeing on average, trends are showing where things are declining, why stop? Why this arbitrary and dogmatic number of 12 weeks or 14 weeks or 16 weeks? It really doesn't make sense. And if we're considering how long it takes for an enanthate ester to reach full blood serum concentrations, it's about 4 to 5 weeks. And if you're only on for 12 weeks, well, that's not really giving you much time to be exposed to the total dose of the compound. Now, there's another problem with what he has to say, which is regarding PCTs or post-cycle therapies. Lots of good data has been published, like the Harlem study, taking several hundred men who were on anabolic steroids and then having them come off cold turkey. One group they would put on post-cycle therapies, such as the ones he recommended. Other groups they would actually give no post-cycle therapy, but 6 months later they would test them and see where is their fertility, where is their endogenous production of testosterone, and would you imagine that after 6 months they were both the same. So it really doesn't matter if you take a huge post-cycle therapy, your body will naturally and endogenously recover what it's been doing its whole life prior to you taking steroids. Now, the other problem is you shouldn't be taking a PCT because someone's cycle usually isn't their first and only cycle, it's the first of many. And the problem is that when you go hypogonadal, which everyone virtually will, following a cycle, you are in a less healthy state than you would be if at a super physiological dose of androgens. The hypogonadal state is correlated with heart failure, it's correlated with neurodegeneracy, it's correlated with circulatory dysfunction, it's correlated with diabetes and high blood glucose, high fasting insulin, and obesity. It's definitely more deleterious for the human body than being at super physiological doses of testosterone. And so in a real world, what someone should do is not come off, but go to a real TRT dose, something like 125 to 100 milligrams per week. You don't need to be exaggerated. You don't need to be this crazy one, like, people get so obsessed and they go to one extreme versus the other, and they forget that there's this continuum, and you don't have to be one or the other. You can be somewhere along the line, just kind of like autism and how far I am on the spectrum. I have no idea, but it's somewhere in there. And the same thing can be said about steroid usage, recovery, and so on. You don't need to come off. And if you need to maintain fertility, you don't need to come off to do that either. You can take human chorionic gonadotropin, for instance, and completely sustain your natural fertility. Using things like SARMs, estrogen receptor modulators, not a great idea either. There's lots of good data that supports that those could be very disruptive in a cognitive sense and cause a lot of irrational mood disorders as well as vision impairment permanently. You don't need to use these things. You just simply go to TRT, and when you want to come off, start using HCG prior to coming off, get your natural testes back to producing intratesticular testosterone, and obviously get LH-FSH pumping. Then, and only then, once you've removed the gear, keep maintaining HCG, stop using the HCG once the testosterone or whatever it was has been cut out for about 4 to 5 weeks, considering that it was hopefully an enanthate ester. If it was an undecuanate ester, you're pretty screwed. You're gonna have to wait probably 8 months to a year. But anyways, you're going to see that the testosterone levels will resume quickly, and you never had to use something that was blocking an actual receptor in your brain, cardiac tissue, and even more. It's kind of crazy to think that this individual is from a clinic, and some people are probably going to hate me for this because, well, oh my god, you know, my doctor said this and that, and that's cool, dude.
Alright, some non-natty chat for you motherfucking fiends. The bro wants to do his first LGD run, hey? One thing to note, this shit right here is no motherfucking joke. It's more powerful than test, mate. Way more powerful. People think that just because it's an oral, it's some little beginner thing, but it's not, bro. It's incredibly powerful. I would advise that you don't even touch it, mate, because no one knows the long-term side effects. Shit's only been around for like 20 years. Everyone who's been taking LGD, mate, in 20 years' time, they could all just drop off like flies one day. We don't know. It's incredibly toxic on the liver, number one, so you gotta get your bloods checked. You gotta get your liver checked, mate. If you're actually stupid enough to do it, I would want to make sure that my liver enzymes were in check. And lastly, it's going to shrink your little jewels, your little peanuts, into dust, bro. It's going to flatline your natural test so hard. So if someone was to do that, they would need some Nolva on deck. Also known as tamoxifen.
Oh my god. So first of all, I appreciate him saying the truth, which is that these SARMs, he said 20 years, not even true. that's one thing to be very clear about. SARMs, selective androgen receptor modulators, most of them don't make it past phase 1 clinical trials. Some of them do, yes, but then they completely reach critical mass and don't make it past that, right? They reach maybe phase 2 and then they drop out very quickly due to a host of different side effects, like we talked about with RAD 140, liver failure, cardiac arrest, I mean, many different things that literally killed people. Yet, hey, people sell it all the time. Totally cool. Now, with SARMs, he's talking about it in a way that's really highlighting that it's powerful. And I think that's going to give people a big trip to say, well, fuck my health, dude, I'm taking it. Because a lot of individuals care about short-term gain over long-term success. I would have chose words differently, but he's right in saying that it's highly hepatotoxic. It's going to cause absolutely horrific side effects for someone who doesn't know what they're doing. And as a first cycle, it's terrible. You could really just get away with using Anavar, for instance, which is a dihydrotestosterone derivative, and therefore it won't necessarily give negative feedback to the estrogen system or the estrogenic pathway. If you really wanted to do an oral only cycle, Anavar at 15 to 20 milligrams a day for about 4 to 5 weeks will get you done. You might put on some muscle, you feel pretty good in the gym, and you won't completely thrash your natural testosterone production because, again, it's not influencing estrogen. And also, it's not going to be in there long enough to completely cut off your natural testosterone production. So these things are really important to consider. I wouldn't be using experimental compounds that haven't been approved for human use. I would be looking towards what is currently being used in humans, Anavar, testosterone, Primable, and so on, as a better alternative. And mind you, a much cheaper alternative. So at the end of this all, there's clearly a lot of delusions online still. And I probably have spouted a ton of them myself at some point or another, and I don't blame these people for doing it. You learn one thing and you talk about it, and then obviously the next day or the next year, you learn many new things, and then you completely change your opinion. I oftentimes become a new person every year with the way I approach things, whether that's finances, enhancements, or many other kind of things. But I just really wish that, for whatever reason, the people spouting the most incorrect information didn't reach the pinnacle of algorithm attention. It is an unfortunate reality we live in, but one that we must face. And I hope that this video can reach at least enough of you to guide you in the right way, as well as you can watch my first cycle video on this channel. I break down for almost an hour how to do your first cycle in depth, like extremely in-depth, down to the needles you need to use. It is a very good watch, and I would suggest you watch it if it's something you're considering. If it's not, that's all fine and dandy. Thank you for being here and watching. If it is, great, even better, because I post videos all the time about certain things like this, and what people do is a bad choice. You might want to follow or subscribe too. So please do. And also, if you guys want to join a Discord group, we have one. It is a great resource for many people who are looking into fitness and bodybuilding, and specifically enhancements. We have a lot there for you that could help with your journey, if you know what I mean, and it's worth checking out. I will see you guys in the next video.